Just when we thought that Merab Dvalishvili's couldn't get any more terrifying, he became much more terrifying. Merab Dvalishvili has become terrifying to an extent that I think it's time to pack it up, boys. I think it's time to grab our belongings and hit the old dusty trail. Because what the ever-living Christ do you do about this guy? Like, what do you do about it? All right, going into this fight, I think that there were a lot of theoretical adjustments that Sean O'Malley could have made to win this fight based on their last fight. And here's the thing. Sean O'Malley did make these adjustments. Sean O'Malley did do what he needed to try to do, but Merab was a step ahead of all of it. Merab fought with a certain kind of elegance, a certain level of game planning and preparation that was absolutely elite. On top of all of that, he evolved. Merab has evolved. And in the breakdown for this fight, I did foreshadow this. What I said was, you have to anticipate that Merab is going to come into this fight with adjustments himself. He's going to try to change certain things up. If Merab can take him down and slap a body triangle on him, or even just develop a really high level pinning ability, or have a couple of very dangerous submissions, all of a sudden, it's a completely different fight. But I didn't truly believe it. I didn't truly believe it. Something about that statement, my psyche just couldn't quite accept it because it was too terrifying to comprehend. A version of Merab that truly has finishing ability on the ground paired with his relentlessness and his strength. I couldn't accept it. But here we are. Now, in terms of the things that Sean O'Malley needed to try to change in this fight, I think there were two big ones, right? One of which being the strength advantage that Merab had. That was one of the key difference makers in their first fight, was that every single time that Merab got a hold of Sean, he was just ragdolling him. Of course, the example we kept looking at, which was the most shocking, was this one right here, where Merab is bum rushing Sean. Sean grabs an underhook, gets his hips back, is defending beautifully, and he gets bulldozed and falls over and gets stuck in a front headlock. That was a problem, right? And going into this fight, Sean had been talking about how he's been hitting the weight room. He's been trying to get stronger. Obviously, fucking DJ was telling Sean that he looked thicker and stronger.
You look strong.
Yeah.
You got some muscle on you.
Yeah.
Right? Where before, I'm not saying, you said it before, you're kind of, leaner.
Yeah.
But this time, I'm like, okay, he's actually strong. Your core looks strong. So it looks like you're more prepared this time than you were the last time.
Like 8 weeks, all we did was lift. Like upper body stuff, I couldn't do too much. Physical therapy with my legs, but we just lifted. But yeah, I've been actually lifting a lot more. But really, you get that grappling strength from grappling.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't matter how much fucking weight you're throwing around in the gym, but I've been able to grapple a lot more, and I feel way more like strong in grappling position.
And, that needed to be something that was fixed. He needed to be able to fend off the takedowns better. He absolutely had to. And, well, I think all hope of that flew out the fucking window in round one, where Merab is in on a double leg. Sean O'Malley has an underhook. He's spreading his base out. He's essentially doing exactly what you need to in order to try to defend this takedown. And he gets lifted into the air and then put down. And yeah, oh boy, that's a problem. That's a problem. You look at the final finishing sequence right before Sean got submitted. Sean gets back to his feet, and they end up in a 50-50 clinch exchange right here. Sean has an underhook. Merab has an underhook. And Sean, again, gets manhandled. Like, there was nothing 50-50 about this position, all right? All that work in the weight room, all of that extra size Sean apparently put on, it just wasn't there, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter, all right? He could not negate that advantage like he needed to. I think the other big one was Sean could not be overextending on his right hands like he was doing in the very first fight. In their first fight, Merab was just waiting for Sean to try to step in with a right hand, and every time Sean did, Merab would immediately capitalize, use that opportunity to safely close the distance without any risk of getting countered, and that is where he found most of his success. And Sean tried to make this adjustment. He did. He was not stepping in and whiffing on any right hands upstairs this time. He was looking to maintain range, land the teep like we saw him have success in the last fight, and he was looking to land his straight shots to the body. Now, we figured going into this fight that Merab was going to improve his teep defense. Again, like I said about a million times, any competent coach is going to look at this and say, that needs to be fixed, and it did. Merab this time was swiping away the teep every single time, and he was doing a much better job defending. But again, we weren't necessarily relying on getting a TKO via teeps to the body. We just needed a way for Sean to score points from a distance and make Merab have to be the one to try to close the space. But where Merab was, again, just a step ahead of these adjustments was in the last fight, Sean kept going for that straight shot to the body, and Merab would just move away every single time. Well, this time, every single time Sean went to the body, Merab again was capitalizing and immediately closing the distance. And again, what makes it so difficult is the fact that Merab is fast. He's quick. It's just that simple. And like we talked about in the breakdown, when you pair all of that with Merab's feints, it is just such a problem. When they were out in space, Merab is just constantly feinting his level down, feinting punches, and it's so difficult to read when he's coming in. You don't know if he's going to throw an overhand, or he's going to shoot, or he's going to throw an overhand and a shot together. It is very difficult to read. So when there was the occasional moment of Merab overextending here, if you want to call it that, like theoretically, right, you can say here, this is the moment Sean should have planted and landed. It's just so much easier said than done when you pair together Merab's speed, his feints, the fact that, Sean is circling away against the fence where it's harder to plant and throw. It just made it that much more difficult. Now, there were the occasional moment where Merab did overextend out in space and he did get countered, but, these moments were fairly few and far between, and again, just paired with Merab's speed and how worried Sean O'Malley was from the takedowns, because again, the strength advantage was still there in full force. It just makes it that much more difficult to find that one kill shot. And it wasn't for a lack of trying. Like, there's this moment right here where Merab, he's definitely getting more comfortable as the fight's going on. He does overextend right here. Sean puts all of his body behind this counter shot. Merab is about to run into this shot full force. He's not defending. His hands are down. Again, he is running face first into this. This could have been terrible, and Sean just whiffs. He misses. Theoretically, this could have been the moment. And he misses. He just misses. Who knows? Maybe the lighting at this arena was just a little too distracting for Sean. I mean, I don't know. But the opportunity was there. Sean doesn't have an excuse. But again, of course, right, the big thing going into this fight was, right, their very first fight, Sean, in hindsight, didn't have a great game plan. He had a torn labrum. He still won 2 out of the 5 rounds. He still, had moments, right? Theoretically, because of the fact that Merab has never really shown a high finishing ability at all, Sean was always going to have a chance. Well, all of a sudden, Merab has a fucking monster ninja choke. He almost sort of turned that into an Ezekiel choke as Sean went to his back, and that is a fucking problem. I mean, we are starting to border areas of just unfairness now, all right? Merab was already such a problem before. How is it only getting worse? How is it only getting worse? Next, we have Cory Sandhagen fighting for the title, it seems like. And you know what? I actually think that Cory Sandhagen can perhaps give Merab some problems. Obviously, the main difference between Cory Sandhagen and Sean O'Malley is the fact that Cory Sandhagen doesn't have the same amount of power and speed that Sean has. Cory doesn't really have an ability to knock you out with one punch. So it's going to be hard for him to deal with Merab's pressure. But I think he is a lot more technical than Sean is on the ground overall. He has a very good scrambling ability. Obviously, Cory's cardio is very, very, very good. All around on the ground, he is way more technical than Sean O'Malley is. I also think the one thing that can really help him out here is the fact that on the ground, Cory doesn't have to play a super traditional jiu-jitsu game with Merab. He can slide under to the legs and kind of take the fight to an area where perhaps Merab won't be as ready for. I mean, again, Davison Figueiredo is a very, very high-level grappler who has shown, very good leg lock propensity in the past, and he just didn't understand and didn't have the same level of awareness in these kind of positions as Cory did, obviously having Ryan Hall in his corner. I think, obviously, when Sean's getting taken down by Merab, he keeps trying to, frame on the bicep, throw up triangles, and it's like, good fucking luck with that. You're fighting a jacked hamster who's so explosive and quick. He's going to scramble out of any sort of submission attempt like that. But, maybe Cory Sandhagen could take the fight to an area where he's not as prepared for. But that strength advantage that Merab seems to have over everybody, you would imagine is going to absolutely be there against Cory. I mean, when Cory fought Aljamain Sterling, that was, a huge factor. Aljo just shoves Cory up against the fence, and, Aljo said himself that Cory did not feel strong, jumps on his back, finishes the fight very quickly. Look, I'm kind of scared to say this, but God, if Merab can develop really high-level back takes now on top of his submission ability he seems to have now, I don't want to think about that. And you know what? Maybe it's possible. But overall, Cory, he has the flying knees, he has the movement, but, does he really have an ability to prevent Merab from really getting in his face and really swinging like a madman? I don't know. I think that was the one thing that really helped him against Umar, was the fact that Umar doesn't have a lot of power in his hands. His kicks are one of the best aspects of his game. So Merab just really closed the distance because he knew that it was a very low likelihood that Umar could knock him out with a single shot. I think Cory's in the same boat. I think that really getting in Cory's face, really pressuring him, just constantly mixing in the takedowns, hunting that ninja choke every time Cory turtles, it could be an absolute problem. But I do think as we stand now, Cory and Umar are the only two guys that really stand a chance against Merab. And I think that, Merab, of course, even prior to this fight against Sean, was the best bantamweight of all time. And now, again, he's just starting to get a little unfair, isn't he?